Welcome to episode number 73 of Hip Talk Fanatics. I am here with Will Rucker talking about Sixers and the trades that went down and talking some of the also. Welcome, Will, and happy to have you back on.
Sir, thanks for having me.
What are your thoughts on Daryl Morey's moves this offseason? Do you see other small pickups before the season gets underway?
Yeah, I've liked all the pickups so far for the most part. Obviously Paul George, the biggest one, massive to be able to get him without giving up any assets. Perfect fit with Maxey and Embiid. I think that stuff will all work out great. They'll work well together. They'll play well together. As long as Embiid and Paul George are healthy, the Sixers will win a ton of games. Be one of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference. As for the other signings, bringing Oubre back, I thought was a good move, especially at the number we got him at only $8 million a year. I thought he might get a little more than that on the open market. Being able to get Caleb Martin from Miami, another big move. Got a playoff proven role player, a guy that'll knock down big shots, won't be scared of the moment. We'll be able to fit into the defense and be able to guard guards and wings better than a lot of guys we've had in recent years, especially for that. And to be able to lock him up on a 4-year deal is big too. Bringing back Kyle Lowry, another solid move. I think that he'll be better now that he won't have to be necessarily a starter on this team and can play more of just a backup role for Maxey. That'll help a ton. Not a huge fan of Eric Gordon necessarily, but I understand it for a vet minimum, veteran guy on a playoff team. He should be able to play some decent minutes in the regular season. I worry about him a bit in the playoffs. Once you get deeper in the season with his age and his as much as his defense has declined, I worry about that a little bit. But um, yeah,
Uh, I came up with this question. I said, for example, let's say the Sixers would have to play the Knicks once again in the playoff series. Do you think they would be able to advance now with additional Paul George?
I do. I think as long as the Sixers are healthy, that they're a better team than the Knicks. I think that if Embiid's at 100, even if when Embiid was much less than 100%, he dominated that series, and now they don't have Isaiah Hartenstein. So Embiid would dominate that series even more. If Paul George is healthy, I think he can combat anything that the Knicks bring on the wing as far as Bridges and Anunoby and those guys, because Paul George is a better player than all those guys. And then Maxey, another year developing, another year of growth. He already had a big series against the Knicks this year. Um, Obviously, the Knicks have better depth than we have right now. The Sixers still have 3 open roster spots, so we'll see how they fill those spots out and who they add. I think that the loss of Batum hurts a little bit. So it'll definitely hurt even more if you don't eventually replace that role with someone that can play playoff caliber minutes. But I think, all things considered, if the Sixers can make it to the playoffs healthy in a series with the Knicks, I think that they would win.
What are your thoughts on Tobias Harris and Paul Reed together in Detroit?
Um, I think it's well documented that I'm not the biggest Tobias Harris fan in the world, so I didn't have any problem with seeing him go. I am kind of shocked at the fact that he was still able to find a way to get $26 million a year. I've said before, I think that his dad, which is his agent, should be put in the Hall of Fame because he's been able to get Tobias ridiculous amounts of money on the market as a free agent 2 different times now. As for Paul Reed, kind of just a roster casualty. Sixers needed that little bit more space to be able to maneuver and get Caleb Martin, so they had to let Reed go. Obviously, replaced him by drafting a Dembona. I wish Paul Reed the best. I hope he has a good career in Detroit. And beyond that, I'm glad that he was able to get picked up, and hopefully he can make it past his guarantee date in January, so he gets paid the rest of his contract that he signed last summer when he got the offer sheet from the Jazz that we matched. I think he's a guy that I wish he could have worked out in Philly, but kind of undersized for the 5, not really skilled enough for the 4, kind of a tweener type, played hard, was useful in certain matchups. But I think as far as once you get deeper into the playoffs, I'm not sure if he's a guy that is necessarily going to contribute for you in that sense. So I understood letting him go.
Uh, how do you feel about the trio, McCain, Maxey, and Embiid?
I feel good about it. I think that as McCain gets older and grows a little bit, and even throughout this year, gets more comfortable with the NBA, the speed, the length of different defenders and things like that, that him and Maxey can definitely play together at certain points. I think that they'll play well off of each other. I think that Morey drafted McCain because of how good of a fit he is with Joel and Maxey, a guy that can play on the ball and play off the ball, knock down movement threes, play a little pick and roll, handle the ball in DHOs, make the right passes, all those things. It was good to see him finally have a little more success offensively last night in Summer League, and I think that we'll probably see a little more of that as the Summer League continues over the next week. I think he's a guy that definitely will show better with the regular team during the regular season, playing with better players around him. He'll get cleaner looks, have more space to operate, be able to play more of a role that better suits him as opposed to the Summer League where there's not a lot of passing going on from the other guys. He's not really getting a lot of things schemed up for him to get looks, and he's having to try to create a lot of his own offense right now, which necessarily isn't his strongest attribute at the moment.
What are your thoughts on the UDFA pickups?
Justin Edwards was a guy I had in my top 60 on my board. Not as high on him as some people are, but I mean, he's 19 years old, has the pedigree, 19, 20 years old, has the pedigree of being a former top recruit, good size, good length, athletic on the wing. He's a guy that, if you get the right development around him, could maybe eventually carve out a role as a role player. David Jones, guy I'm not really high on. Don't think he's an NBA caliber athlete necessarily. Struggles to get by guys, struggles to defend. I'm not sure that archetype of player will ever break through, especially on our team that is a playoff contender. Judah Mintz and Keve Aluma, though, who we picked up for the Summer League, I've liked what both of those guys have brought, and I think that both those guys should be in consideration for a two-way contract. I'd love to see them keep Judah Mintz around. He was a guy that I had top 40 on my board this year that ended up going undrafted. I think he is a guy that also with the right development, I think he could blossom into a good player. He showed some things defensively and offensively the last couple games in Summer League as well as he's got more comfortable. Aluma, obviously, a big man, knock down some threes, can pass a little bit, put it on the floor a little bit. Oh, he's an older prospect, but I think that he's a guy that has shown himself well and has maybe played himself into a two-way contract.
It should be interesting to see how McCain fits the offensive system with Nick Nurse. And my last question is, what are your thoughts on the other moves that happened around the East?
I think that the Knicks definitely got better by getting Mikal Bridges. I think that they gave up quite a bit to get him, which I wouldn't have necessarily given up that much. It kind of locks them in even with the Brunson taking the discount on the extension. It kind of locks the Knicks into this core that they have now. They don't have really much maneuvering room outside of who they have, aside from being able to bring those guys back. And I'm not sure that the team that they have is necessarily top title contender. They're definitely probably a tier 2 contender. But they're a team that I think outside of Brunson struggles with self-creation. I just think they'll struggle with guys being able to create their own shots. It's imperative for them that Brunson stays healthy because his heliocentric role in that offense is huge for them and is going to have to be what carries them throughout a playoff series. But I do think Mikel's shooting will help them on the perimeter. I think adding him and OG obviously makes a great defensive wing tandem. I'm interested to see how Julius Randle fits back into the mix with them now that he's coming back from injury. I think that there's ways that he could help them. I also think that there's ways that he could hurt them depending on what role they try to squeeze him into and how he accepts that role. Milwaukee hasn't done much, but they've done a pretty good job on them as far as vet minimums. Being able to get Gary Trent for a minimum is a steal. I think it'll help them a bit, spacing the floor for Giannis. A younger guy, maybe he can get back to playing better defense like he did in Portland in his first year in Toronto, as opposed to the last couple of years where he's kind of fallen off on that end of the court. They got Taurean Prince as well, who has been a solid role player in the league for several years. Boston able to bring everybody back. Obviously, sucks for us. They're really damn good, and they're going to be hard to beat. But the Sixers are getting closer, and they'll be able to be competitive in any series as long as they're healthy. Outside of that, I don't really think there's any other contenders in the East. I mean, Miami's fallen off. They've lost some of their key role players. Their guys are getting old. Jimmy's getting older. I'm not sure they're much of a threat. But you never know with Spoelstra in the playoffs. Miami kind of has that black magic every year. They seem to be able to give teams trouble even when you think that they can't. The Cavs brought Donovan Mitchell back. They're a good team, but I don't think they're really a threat to any of those top teams in the East. The Pacers brought most of their guys back. I think that theirs is going to be about development from within, being able to contend as far as guys like Jarace Walker developing, Halliburton taking another leap, Obi Toppin, guys like that. Aaron Neesmith, if those guys, Nimhard, if those guys can take another leap, then they can continue to ascend a little bit in the Eastern Conference. Orlando added Contavious Caldwell-Pope obviously makes them even more formidable. They were already really solid this year, makes them even better defensively on a team that was already a good defensive team. They're another team that's going to be a lot about their development from within. Guys like Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, all young guys. As they continue to grow, Orlando will continue to get better. So it's interesting to see the intersection of kind of those older teams with the older stars like the Sixers and the Bucks, where they meet as far as where they're at on the mountain, as opposed to Orlando and those other teams ascending. How many years it takes for them to really catch up. So we'll see. I think it'll be a really fun to watch the Eastern Conference this year. Those top four teams, especially battling, obviously, with everyone trying to chase down Boston. But the Sixers definitely put themselves in a better position. And with 3 open roster spots, I'm interested to see who they go out and add on with these last couple of minimum deals, as there's still a couple of useful guys out there on the market that I could see helping. And, of course, with the re-signing of KJ Martin, being able to trade him at the deadline as long as some minimums, flip those for another guy, which I'm sure they've got several guys that they're targeting. So we'll see what happens. It's hard to say now where the Sixers really are as far as being able to contend for the title until that move is made, I think, to add another piece. But they're definitely, in my opinion, as long as they stay healthy, will be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Eastern Conference.
Do you think the Sixers can actually be in the finals this year, or do you think it will take another year?
I think that it's definitely a possibility. Like I said before, if the Sixers can stay healthy, they can beat anybody in any given night, in any given series. If they've got a healthy Joel Embiid, a healthy Paul George, and a healthy Tyrese Maxey, there's not a big 3 in the league that is better than those 3 guys as a unit. So we'll see. And a couple of guys like Council can step up into a bigger role. If McCain can give them something as a rookie and ascend his level of play and be a good playoff player. Caleb Martin, if he fits in well, if Oubre can have a career year shooting and things like that, all those things would play a big factor into it, as well as what other moves the Sixers end up making. But I think either way, if I had to peg it right now, I'd say that they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference, all things considered, behind Boston, right in the tier with New York and Milwaukee, not too far behind. But I think that they definitely have a chance to get to the finals this year if all things break their way. You always have to have a little bit of luck to get to the finals, and hopefully the basketball gods will finally smile down on the Sixers.
Yeah, I'm sure Sixers Twitter is gonna be on fire once the season gets underway, and I know exactly of the feeling of you being all over it, and I'm looking forward to your comments on Twitter. Definitely, once the season gets underway and everything else. So I'll be happy to have you back on anytime during the season and definitely recap some games.
Yes, sir, for sure. I'm looking forward to it. Just hit me, DM me. We talk a lot, so whenever we can figure it out with our schedules, I'd love to get back on.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.